Hello, my name is Darren Thomas. In this video, we're going to take a look at factor trinomials again. But this time, we're going to use a method called grouping, or sometimes called the AC method. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at how this works out. So imagine that I have the following trinomial: 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. And I want to figure out how to factor this. Now, looking at this right now, there doesn't seem to be a clear way to do this using some of the prior methods that we used in the past, where we kind of split up, the middle term or whatever. But there is another technique, and I want to try to make this as clear as possible. And it's called, again, grouping, or you can also call it the AC method. Now, what we do here is, let's just say we have these three terms here. 6x squared, we'll just call this A, if you will. 7x, we'll call this a B, and the constant 2, we'll call it a C. What we can do is this: if we multiply A times C, A times C, it'll give us, of course, in this situation, 6 times 2, which will equal 12. Now, if we factor the 12, this is the criteria we have to set to get the answer. If we factor the 12, here's what we got to do. It has to be that when we factor 12, so m dot n, which is going to equal a dot c here in this case, it needs to equal 12. And if we add these two terms together, so after we factor 12, whatever two factors we have, they must equal the middle term here, the b. So when I factor this 12 here, when I multiply my first term by my third term, I know this is getting confusing. We're going to do an example. It needs to equal, the sum needs to be 7, because that's my middle term, or it needs to equal b, if you will. So let me see if I can make this clear. What we did was this: we took the first term here, 6x squared, we just took the constant 6, and we multiplied by the third term, and this gave us this number 12. Now, when we factor the 12, we have to make sure that the sum of the two factors that we find equal to 7. In other words, they equal to our middle term here. So why don't we go through the process and see if we can follow the thought. So we know that 12 times 1 is going to give us 12. But when we add 12 and 1 together, we get 13. So that's not going to work. Next, we can try 6 times 2. Again, that'll give us 12 if we multiply it. So it meets this first criteria. However, when we add them together, unfortunately, it gives us 8. This is not working either. Now, we can also try, how about 3 times 4? Again, this will come to 12, but if we add 3 plus 4, we now get 7. So this one, 3 and 4, it satisfies our first term, our first criteria. 3 times 4 will give us 12, but it also satisfies our second criteria. 3 plus 4 must equal 7. So we know that this will work. So this is what we get when we factor it out. See if you can follow my thoughts here. We get the following. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide here. I get 6x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 2. So I was able to split out this middle term here. Okay? And how did I get this 3x plus 4x? Because 3 times 4 will give me 12. Remember, I need something that multiplies to 12, because 6 times 2 is what I multiply by. That's my A. This is my A, remember, and this was my C. Okay? So 3 times 4 is 12, but 3 plus 4 gives me my 7x. So 3x plus 4x. Now, all I got to do now is I factor these separately. So I take this right here and I factor it separately, and I take this right here and I factor it separately. Now, there's nothing magical about this. I could take the 4x over here, but it doesn't really factor clearly. But this is very clear, and I'll show you how it works out. So if I factor 6x squared plus 3x, this is what I get. I get the 3x on the outside, like so. And then inside, I have the 2x plus 1. Now, how do I know this is correct? I will show you. 3x squared times 2x, 3x times 2x will give me 6x squared. And 3x times 1 will give me 3x. So I know that's okay. Over here, I can factor out a 2. And so now I get 2, and then inside I get 2x plus 1. And so how do I know this is correct? Well, 2 times 2x will give me 4x, and 2 times 1 will give me 2. Now you can probably see that I can combine factors. We've done this in prior videos where we did other methods of factoring trinomials. So to make this simple, this 3x and this 2 are combined. 3x plus 2, like so. And then the 2x plus 1 is left alone like this, is combined like that. And if I wanted to double check my work, I could do this really quickly. You can see 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Let's see here, 2 times 2x is plus 4x, and then 3x times 1 is plus another 3x, and then 2 times 1 will give me 2. And of course, if I combine like terms right here, let me give you a better color here. I will get 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. Let's do one more to make sure that this is clear in all of our minds, because this is a little bit tricky. So here's another one. Now I have 6x squared plus 13x plus 2. Now, the first thing I do is I want to, of course, give my little names here. So I got my A, my B, and my C. And what I need to do now is very clear, like I did last time. I need to multiply A times C, because this will give me the number that I want to do my factoring for. So A times C, 6 times 2 equals 12, like so. Now, the next thing I have to do is when I factor the 12, it must meet the following criteria. Of course, when I multiply them together, like so, it should equal 12. And also, but when I add them together, it should equal B, which for me right here is 13, or it should equal 13. That's the criteria it must meet. And so I think we can probably tell very clearly what the answer is. So if I do 12 times 1, I get 12. And if I do 12 plus 1, I get 13. So we're already done. That was quick and easy. So this is how we can separate out the middle term now. We can separate out the middle term as 6x squared, we haven't messed with that yet, plus 12x plus x plus 2, like so. And now we want to, of course, continue to finish off the factoring by dealing with, 2 terms at a time. And so we'll combine these guys right here and these guys right here. And so what will I do here is very, very simple. When I factor this, I can pull out the 6x. This is very clear to me. So now I have the 6x on the outside. On the inside, I will have x, and I will have plus 2. And how do I know that's correct? 6x times x will give me 6x squared. 6x times 2 will give me 12x. And over here, now this is going to be a little tricky. There's really nothing to factor, so I just have the x plus 2. However, this will not work by itself. There's something happening on the outside that we don't normally see, and that will be the number 1. If we don't put a 1 there, it'll not work out. But generally, you know that if we multiply by 1, we don't normally put the 1 there most of the time. So I'm going to move to the next screen to finish off this experience here. So just to rewrite this, I had 6x, x plus 2, and then I had plus 1 times x plus 2. Now, you probably can already see something. We're going to combine these guys right here, so we have 6x plus 1. This is critical. If you leave off the 1, you will not get the correct answer. But like I already mentioned a few moments ago, you normally don't put the 1 in front. When you're multiplying by 1, there's no reason to put it there most of the time. But in this case, you need it. And then, of course, we have our second thing that we just put on here, this factor like so, and we get this. Now, we can double check it. So, remember that our original thing was 6x squared plus 13x plus 2. Let's see if we can get that. 6x times x is 6x squared. Nothing new there. 6x times 2 is plus 12x. We've seen that before. 1 times x is going to be x, and 1 times 2 is going to be 2. And that should look very familiar. That's exactly what we had a moment ago. We combined the like terms. 6x squared plus 13x plus 2, our original answer. So you can see the power of grouping by understanding this little simple idea of multiplying the first term, which is normally the squared term or whatever it is here, times the constant at the end. You get the number you can use for factoring. And when you factor this number, you must keep in mind these two criteria. Whatever you multiply it by must equal the original number. And when you add the two factors that you get, it must equal the middle term or the b term right here. When you do that, you now know how to split apart the middle term. And then you group I guess it's like a polynomial into two binomials, and you're able to factor those, and then you combine them at the end. A very beautiful, elegant method for dealing with what can be a complex problem for factoring. So, in this video, we talked about how to use the grouping method for factoring, also known as the AC method. I've already kind of explained this, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out how to split apart the middle term. You know, often the term that's in the middle, if you will, the b term, if you will, and you're trying to use your knowledge of factoring, multiplying the first term, the quadratic term by the constant or whatever the level or the powers that be in that particular equation, to figure out how to group things. Once you know how to group them, you're able to separate the middle term or whatever the term is in order to find out how to factor it. Very, very practical method for dealing with trinomials. So, my name is Darren Thomas. I hope this video was useful for you. Take care.